All right, what up, team? We talked with Caleb Campbell today, who played in the NFL. He's a West Point graduate, became a janitor, and is now a world-renowned public speaker. I was not expecting this conversation to go the way that it did at all.
This episode is a cheat code for finding peace and fulfillment in your life. Listen to the whole thing. You will gain so much wisdom.
See you on the inside. Peace. Welcome back, party peeps. We're on the Decision Lab, and today we're having one of our expert interviews. We're talking with Caleb Campbell. He's a former NFL player. Now he's a keynote speaker. I'm excited. I saw him in Kansas City at an event I was at, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'd love to talk to this guy. So here we are, turning a dream into reality. Thanks for jumping on with us today.
Thanks for having me. I just noticed it's Chloe, Caleb, and Cody. Bunch of C's in the house today.
Dude, we talk about that all the time. CJ is one of our other teammates, and it's all C's.
All right. I love it. Look at that.
I know. It's good time.
Good to be with you. Thanks, man. And I appreciate the kind words.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I was truly inspired. Like seeing another dude up there in front of so many other like high-level business people being so vulnerable was inspiring. I love that. I try to do that myself, and just seeing it so like a beacon of beautiful light is what it felt like when I was watching.
Dude, I appreciate that. Honestly, when I started speaking in schools, and I don't know if you know anything about speaking in like either middle schools or high schools, students are ruthless, and they have like no like qualms, or like they're not going to hide how they feel. And early on in my speaking career, starting out in students, when I'm trying to like discover my voice, like to be I would say to be a good high school student speaker, you have to have some skill sets. You got to be funny, you got to do magic tricks, you got to juggle, you got to rap, you got to do something that can hold their attention. And I can't do any of that shit. And I realized like early on in my speaking career that, oh my God, like my natural storytelling and the way that I model vulnerability through my storytelling, that's my superpower. And I've just learned how to hone in on just really modeling that transparency and that vulnerability through my storytelling. And so it's just always nice when somebody can recognize that and acknowledge that.
Oh yeah. I definitely can, especially coming from, you're a huge dude as well. I'm a 6'6", I'm a big guy as well. And so I just feel like when you see that kind of stuff coming from huge people, like that seem like these indomitable forces, I don't know. It's like watching a rock cry or something. It's beautiful. Like,
honestly, that's like, I felt like one of the reasons, one, I stay in the gym because it's so good for my mental health. And also the gym is like, I change gyms frequently. Like every 6 months I have to find a new gym because I'm like always trying to build community in the gym. I'm like, oh, hey, John. Oh, hey, Sarah. Oh, like Jackie, how's everyone doing today? But I also stay in the gym because I think a lot of times with my background, as a West Point graduate, Army officer, and an NFL athlete, even, had the unique experience of bobsledding for Team USA for a while. A lot of times when people hear me or they are about to hear me speak, they think traditionally that I'm going to go on stage and talk about how to be stronger and how to kick down the door to success and willpower and grit and determination. And I'm just like, actually, yes, that, but also softness, surrendering, grieving, authenticity, vulnerability. And so I feel like I am kind of like this Trojan horse that comes on stage.
Dude, that's exactly it. You walk up like a Jocko, like the good.
Exactly.
But then it's all this other. So, okay. Yeah, cool. I digress. Let's, you foreshadowed plenty here. I love this. We'll get into all these different stories, but tell us how you got here first. Like, how did you get where you are today? Like, talk about like where you grew up and what your family was like, that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I grew up in Texas, in a small Texas town. Tumbleweeds and tornadoes, and even from a young age, I always had that deep desire to do something meaningful with my life. I'm if you're familiar with the Enneagram, like I identify as a 4-wing 3, and that is the individualist and the achiever. And so there's always been that just innate desire in me that has like, I want to do something meaningful with my life. I want to make a difference. I don't want to waste my life. The fear of insignificance was like a deep fear for the majority of my life. And so my pursuit of success for the longest time was trying to outwork that fear. And for the time being, that fear and this deep desire to do something with my life, it served me well. Like I had told in my keynote, it took me from the red dirt roads of the Texas Panhandle to West Point, where my freshman year I was playing college football at West Point. I was all conference my sophomore year. I had a breakout season, was one of the top collegiate football players in all of college America. College football, my junior year, had the honor of putting a C on my uniform, which stands for captain. And then my senior year, I found myself in Radio City Music Hall in New York City, where I was selected in the NFL draft. And that made me the second player in the history of West Point to ever get selected, and still the first player ever given the permission to go and play and serve simultaneously. And still today, you know, like what is it? Over a decade later, I'm still the last draft pick to ever come out of West Point.
Wow.
And you know, but it was in the middle of my childhood dream in the NFL where I kind of started to realize the way that I was doing life, the endless striving to be more, to do more, to achieve more in hopes that one day it's enough. It left me, you know, the type of tire that more sleep doesn't solve. Like deep down, I knew that more was possible, but the way that I was doing life, it just was no longer working. It was more life draining than life giving. And here I am in the middle of my NFL dream, the dream that I had been working towards since I was just a young boy. And it felt less like a gift to enjoy and more like a battle that had to be survived. And I just kind of got to this point in my life where I was realizing like I'm doing life wrong. Like something is missing. I'm missing something. And, you know, I, at that time, lived with this like inner war where externally I was trying to present this facade that, you know, I am a West Point graduate, I'm an Army officer, I'm an NFL athlete. And so I need to have a smile on my face. I have it all together all the time. I'm a role model for so many others. Like, get it together, Caleb. But internally, I'm just unraveling. And I'm using all of my energy just trying to hold it all together every single day. And there really is, and I say this often, but there's a certain type of pain that surfaces in one's life when you accomplish a dream and realize that you were just as empty, if not arguably more empty than when you began. And at this season of my life, I didn't have the awareness, the tools, or the understanding to handle that pain in a healthy, whole way. And so I started coping with it in a very unhealthy way. And that led me down, you know, just into a very dark path of living externally and presenting myself to the world in one way, living a completely different way behind closed doors. And that self-betrayal that I was constantly living in day after day just began to erode my life from the inside out. And I kind of got to the point of realizing with the substances and other things that I was engaging in hopes to cope and heal the pain or to numb the pain, I was just realizing this can't continue. And that is really the reckoning. I call it a divine ambush that really sent me into a deeper journey, the further journey of understanding, you know, the growth outside of success, the growth beyond success, which then led me into speaking and which led me here. So yeah.
Let's go. I love that. Something I'm curious about, and that I always ask people, it's the trauma therapist in me, is do you happen to remember the first moment that your achiever was born? Like the first time it took on its role?
Yeah. I do. I think the one that stands out the most is 6-year-old. I want to say I'm like playing the memory in my head right now, but
Yeah, no worries.
I had scored the game-winning touchdown in the community all-star championship football game. Now, again, I grew up in Texas. This was a big deal.
Big. That's big. My dad's from Texas, so
Yeah. But I remember just like running to the sideline, seeing my mom with this big smile on her face. And my mom, she was my biggest fan. A lot of my healing, you know, later on in life came from disentangling the enmeshment with my motherhood, with my mom. Just a deep mother wound ran very deep in my life. And you know, she looked at me with that big smile and she said, "Son, I'm so proud of you. I love you so much. You scored the game-winning touchdown." And I knew that there was a part of me that heard, and when I began to internalize that my performance in life, my achievement in life, that determines my measure of acceptance from my primary caretaker who means the world to me. Don't fuck this up. And so that's like really when the achiever came online. And it never rested. It never rested because I also grew up in a very like evangelical Christian world where early on in my life, there was a very convoluted message around God gifted you these talents and now your talents are the way that you kind of return the gift back to God. And there was like this message that was internalized that to live a life of great faith that is pleasing to God means that I need to constantly be achieving more. Like this is my way of giving back. This is my way of really demonstrating the faith that is active in me. And so that was really convoluted at a very young age. And so it wasn't just meeting my mother's approval, but in a lot of ways it was trying to meet God's approval.
Dude.
I feel like so many people will resonate with this too, especially every athlete. You're told your self-worth is based off the scoreboard, and then that self-worth is constantly fluctuating. Oh, I had a good practice today. I'm worthy. I had a bad practice today. I'm not worthy. And so now, how do you articulate your self-worth? Where does that come from?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm curious before I answer that question. I'm going to ask you a question. How would you define self-worth? Because I just want to make sure we're on the same page here.
I would say your internal sense of value.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. Yeah, it's great. And I think for
Well,
the
how do you
longest
define
time,
it first before you answer? How do you
Oh,
define it?
yeah.
yeah, I would say like, how is it? How do I see myself? What do I think
Mhm.
of
Yeah.
myself? Yeah, you know, how do I am I in a healthy relationship with myself? You know, I think that's where that self-worth is derived. And yeah, I fluctuated for years from reprimanding myself to congratulating myself. I had a PhD in self-hatred for the longest time. And I loved it because it was like, what better way to light a fire under your ass to do more, be more, achieve more than to be disgusted with yourself. And, you know, I learned later on in life that you can never criticize your life or criticize yourself into a life that you love. And I learned that the hard way. But I think the way that I kind of look at my self-worth now and how I see myself is I do it oftentimes through the lens of just the inner child. I have 2 kids now. And, you know, you always hear that, you know, parenting is such a beautiful mirror. And my God, it's true. It's a beautiful mirror. And I'm, you know, my daughter's 3.5 and she'll have these meltdowns and I'm watching her have these meltdowns, you know, like any toddler would ever have. And I'm like, wow, I do the same thing. Like I throw these adult tantrums time and time again. It just looks a little bit different. And I get on my hands and my knees and I get, you know, eye level to my daughter. And I just try to create the space to allow her to have the meltdown, but also know that she's safe and she's supported. And we're okay. We're going to get through this together. And I'm not suppressing it. I'm not denying it. I'm not trying to get her to get over it. I'm just with her in it. And I realized early on in my parenting journey that how often I don't do that with the little boy in me.
Dude,
And
that's a great insight.
I think with self-worth for me is the way that I measure it is like, how am I meeting that little boy in me with compassion, with empathy, with curiosity, with holding the space to hear what he has to say when he feels deeply vulnerable and threatened and exposed and scared. And there's something about meeting that little boy in me with such tenderness and softness and compassion and love that allows me to truly see how much I value myself.
Are you familiar with internal family systems?
Yeah, it's game changer for me. It's a lot of the heartbeat of my work that I do with leaders one on
Dude,
one.
holy, me too. I'm trained,
Yeah.
I'm level 1 trained. That's the type of trauma
That's
therapy
my
I'm trained
next,
in.
like, I want to like go deeper into that. It's funny. I just found out I have 2 neighbors on the same block as me that are both level 1 certified. And I was like, can we all hang out? Because
Dude,
I just taught myself. I never realized that for the longest time, like the way that I was beginning to, you know, heal and to create resilience around some of these really wounded parts of me is through like realizing that, no, this is a part of me, like the producer, the performer, the achiever, the perfectionist. They are parts of me that have allowed me to survive. They've allowed me to survive. And you'll love this thing, Cody. Like for my 40th birthday, I went out to the woods about 5:30 in the morning. I built this beautiful altar. And then I went through and I wandered through the woods and I found different items, natural items in the woods that represented these 5 main parts of my life that have just dominated my life and controlled every facet of my life to ensure my survival. And I one by one set them on the altar and I had a heartfelt conversation with them. You know, you're probably familiar with the idea of loyal soldiers, right? And I'm
yeah.
like, you have been so loyal and I am so grateful for you, but we're safe now. Like we're okay. And the whole point was like, I wanted to introduce them to this little artist boy who has never had a seat at the table. This little artist boy who's longing to express his voice in the world because at the time I was just beginning to really write my book and I was coming up with so much resistance and tension trying to get into this flow. And so I brought the little artist boy to the conversation with all of these different parts, and I was basically like, in the most loving way, all of y'all need to shut the fuck up so this little boy can say something meaningful in the world. And so yeah, that's just giving you an example of like how much parts work plays a role in my life.
Dang. What a wild time. Who would have knew? I love IFS.
Yeah,
It is essential to what I do with everybody. I got a parts work set. I do it myself. So
yeah, it's
that's
great.
what are some of the other, so Achiever's one of them. If
Yeah.
you're open to it, what are some of the other ones
Yeah.
that drive your life?
I call it the addict, but not an addict in terms of like substances, but the part of me that is addicted to specialness.
Ooh,
Like I'm addicted to like just being the unique one, the special one, the profound one, like the one
yes.
the one that is so scared to go all in on what is right now because it's not special enough. He's going to be misunderstood. That part of me is still so loud at times where I'm like, hold on. hold on. What is self? What does whole self have to say about this one? And so, the point is that these parts never not come online again. The point is you're very aware of the voices and when they do come online. And so the addict is a really big one. The perfecter, the performer, the achiever, the producer, the lover who has still had to learn how to set boundaries in his life. And so, yeah, those are the ones that I feel like I'm constantly communicating with. And now it's really learning how to communicate with the little artist boy in me. And so, yeah, man, I wrote a whole chapter. Second to last chapter in my book is this, profound experience that I had in the woods on a 7-day vision fast that I was on. The wild child, it was the first time that I, came face to face with my wild child, and it transformed my life.
I feel like
And I was
we
on no
gotta
substances.
ask about the
I was on no
wild.
mushrooms.
Oh, Chloe's sad.
I was completely sober. Yeah, believe me, mushrooms have changed my life, but I was completely sober.
Chloe's a psychedelic researcher, so that's
Oh, very cool.
I
Awesome.
bet
Yeah,
that's what she was
changed
thinking.
my life.
Dude,
Yeah, it
So
changed my life.
Chloe,
Me too.
this is what I've been talking about though in relation to IFS. There are so many people that have experiences like this, non-psychedelic experiences through
Yeah.
IFS and self-energy and things like that.
The thing was, Cody, when I walked away from that experience, and Chloe, like, it was the first time that I deeply understood this is what it means to be in your body. It's like everybody talks about being in your body, and I thought I knew what that meant, but IFS, man, it like brought me into my body, which I think created almost like this psychedelic experience where there was such a tangible divine connection to all things as I was butt ass naked in the woods.
Let's go.
There
That's
was such a
amazing.
tangible connection. Like nothing was missing. And the thing about all of this is like, wait, I have spent my entire life pursuing more, trying to get to a place where it's finally enough. And it's actually been within me this entire time. Like the ground that I've been trying to attain through more willpower, effort, determination, and achievement is actually the ground I've been standing on this entire time. And you can't teach that. You've got to experience that. And I think IFS was this journey that allowed me to shift my life from this nonstop upward trajectory that is so culturally ingrained in us to learning what it looks like to descend deeper into what is here now. And that's a paradigm shift that is so profound and can change every facet of your life.
I love that. It reminds, have you ever heard of be do you have or have do you be? Just that little framing, it reminds, that's how I think of IFS too. So the way you're describing it is so beautiful, and getting to see people. The first time my achiever came off of me, or I was able to unblend from my achieving part, I fell asleep because my actual self was so tired. But my achiever was just pushing the gas pedal so hard.
And then your perfectionist comes online and it's like, why did you fall asleep, you lazy piece of shit?
Dude, I'm like, you're doing therapy wrong right now. And I'm like, wait a minute, you can't do therapy wrong.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's that's a wild. The one thing that stuck out to me is this wild child. Tell us more about that. What was that?
There's like the idea out there that, when we were born, we were all born with a wild twin. And this wild twin is the part that is not domesticated. It's the vitality of life. It's the full essence of who we are, but it's wild. It's untamed. And when we are now growing up in our family systems and in culture, suddenly it's not approved of. Like, get it together, get a plan, quit being so loud. Quit being so much. I need you to lessen a little bit so that we all feel comfortable around you. So like these are the internal messages that we are kind of, receiving consciously or subconsciously in our lives. And, the more that we start to connect to it, what happens is the wild child, that wild twin, is disconnected. It is exiled into the caves of our heart. And I am somebody that strongly believes that when we hit that midlife crisis, or when we find ourselves in a season of life where we feel like it's just no longer working, there's a divine discontentment. We have everything that we might want, but it's still not enough. There's that subtle ache, that deep longing for something more expansive, more spaciousness, more alive. And oftentimes what happens is we misinterpret that ache as something that's missing in our lives. And so what ends up happening is we constantly double down on what has worked in the past. And that's more determination, more hard work, more grit, more willpower, more achievement. And the whole time what we're doing is we're actually distancing ourselves from the real work that needs to be done. And that's going within ourselves and to the parts of us that have been exiled. And so this wild child is the vitality of life. It is the deep wholeness and satisfaction. And it's that feeling like it's enough. The way that I would kind of, or explain what it feels like is really what you feel like on the other side of an orgasm. And it's just like this feeling of intense satisfaction and enoughness. Like, I'm satisfied. Great. Like, right. I'm satisfied. And I think like that is our original knowing. Like, that's our original knowing. And we have just been so disconnected from it. And so the journey isn't trying to discover something new. The journey is rediscovering what's been buried.
100%
And
agree.
that is like, I think at some point in our life, we are on this first half of life. And, like if you are familiar with like, Franciscan priest, Father Richard Rohr, who wrote the book Falling Upward, he does a great job at taking Jungian principles and really explaining it in very kind of modern day culture. And he talks about first half of life and second half of life, and how all of us have a first half of life and all of us have a second half of life. While all of us live our first half of life, not everybody steps into the second half of life. And second half of life has nothing to do with your chronological age. It has everything to do with this spiritual journey that a lot of times people will spend their lifetime avoiding because it looks like the antithesis of what we have been taught to be seen as success. It looks like failure. It looks like giving up. It looks like weakness. It looks like surrendering. It looks like softness, right? That is the healing journey that allows us to rediscover, to deepen within ourselves, and to rediscover that wild child that's been buried and exiled for years, if not for decades. And then in rediscovering that part of us, right, we rediscover the vitality of life.
I couldn't agree more.
This is why I
Something
like
I
y'all.
think-
Just agree with me. This is great.
Well, I mean, it's not that I disagree necessarily, but something like something that they showed us and they talk about in level 1 training is this concept. A lot of people that you share with them what IFS is when you start sessions with them, and they start to think, oh, I need to be self-led constantly and I need to be in this transcendent state always. And they show us this self continuum where it's on one end is pure transcendence, like in that post-orgasmic state 100% of the time, you're in total self, monk floating off the ground, levitating type of state. And then the other end is a dissociated state where you're completely blended with a protective part that's dissociating you, trying to protect you. And it shows like how it's this like continuum or whatever. And life is like the ebb and flow of this continuum.
The dance,
so
right?
I guess, yeah, exactly. Dance. That's the perfect way to describe it. I guess the question with all of that pretext is, how do you balance that? How do you balance because you still speak, you're still on this podcast, you're still out there trying to spread the word, spread the message, you're still trying to go do things in the world. Why aren't you just on a mountain living in that transcendent state? Like why not? And like, how did you decide your balance of that?
Yeah. I think I'm understanding the question. For me, it's I still have a deep hunger to do meaningful things in the world. I still have like a deep longing to go deeper into my life. I was telling my wife this a while back ago, like my greatest desire is not to build a successful speaking business. My greatest desire is to live into the fullness of my expression, right? That's just constantly like this evolution of expression that's moving through me. I want to become a conduit that can express whatever this thing is, this muse that's moving through me into the world. I want to put form to it because I believe, like I truly believe, like that's what heals the world, right? That's what the world needs, and not just from me, but from all of us. All of our unique expressions moving through us from a place of wholeness. And so for me, I think there's this delicate dance between the two, and living in life is the greatest spiritual practice, right? Like living in life is by far the greatest spiritual practice, by far, than just sitting on top of a mountain and meditating. And I think there's great benefit to that. Believe me, I got 2 kids right now. I would give anything to go sit on the top of a mountain and meditate. Like, I get that. It's just not reality. It's not reality. So how do we create that inner sense of peace in the midst of the storm? How do we create that equanimity within us, regardless of the chaos that's swirling around us? And that is a practice. And I think for me, the word that I use is dance, because I am constantly dancing between the two. And it's not about staying in one or the other, right? It's about having the awareness to realize when we are not in that place that connected to that deeper self, when we're not there, or that when a part has overtaken us and we are very blended and dissociative right now. Like, it's just bringing awareness to that, and then over time creating the tools that allows us to shift accordingly.
Love that. The way that helps me to think about, or you go,
Go ahead.
What are some of your favorite tools for bringing yourself back when you lose that sense of self?
Yeah, this has taken some time for me to really like allow myself to feel into this. To give you a little context to what I'm about to say, when I was at the end of my NFL journey, I was in Kansas City. And what's the big theme park outside of, is there Six Flags outside of Kansas City?
It's called
Or is it
Worlds of
like
Fun.
Worlds of Fun? Yeah. So we went to Worlds of Fun. A bunch of guys asked me if I wanted to go towards the end of our training camp, and I, at this time, hated roller coasters in my life. And I also was very, very desperate for friendship and connection, and so I reluctantly said yes. And so we went to Worlds of Fun, and I honestly, I got out of every ride that actually scared me. Like I would buy beers for the guys, I would go into the restroom, I would do anything just to make up an excuse so that I can get out of a ride that scared me. Honestly, because I hated roller coasters. I had a very traumatic experience when I was little, and I just never wanted to be in them again. And I thought I was home free, and we were walking out of the back entrance, and we were probably 15 feet from that back gate. And the last ride was like this free fall machine, right? You get put into a harness, you're with somebody, and they put you to the top. And then at this time, there was like this traffic light. You're hundreds of feet, suspended in the air, and there's this traffic light. And the person on the inside, which was me, when the light goes from red, yellow to green, you like push the big red button and you fall.
The ripcord,
The light went red, yellow, green, and I froze. I actually froze. And this was a season of my life where I was exhausted. Like my eyes were not just tired, my soul was tired. All of my energy was being used to maintain this image of a facade of a man that has it all together all the time, which that is the furthest thing from my truth. And I am exhausted, soul exhausted. And I remember after 120 seconds of just panic up at the top, my friend Zeke, who was with me, he saw how scared I was, and he said, "Caleb," he's like, "we'll get through this together. Like, I know you're scared. It's okay. Let's go home." And we both took deep breaths, and he says, "Push it." And I pushed it. And I'm telling you, those first like fractions of a second when we dropped, I was terrified. Like, I don't know if I've ever felt a fear more palpable than that fear right now. But what it followed was I have never cried more happier tears in my life as I was falling and swinging through the air. And it took me a while to realize this, but it was a time in that fall I've never felt more alive and more free. And as I look back at that, and I realized what it was, and it was because for the first time in my life, I was completely falling. I allowed myself to fall, but there was something outside of my willpower and my ability holding my life together. There was a harness that was holding me. And it was like for the first time, it was like this physical representation of the life that I was being invited to live into. Because up until this point, my entire life was held together by my achievement, my willpower, and my determination. And to let go felt like failure. It felt like the antithesis to success. So I couldn't let go. But here I am in this free fall. And suddenly there is something outside of my ability holding my life together. And I felt free. I felt like I could just, for the first time, and I just started to weep. And so I bring that up because I can say the words right now, "I'm held," and they are instantly grounding. Like, I'm telling you, I could be panicking and I can say, "I'm held." I could put a hand over my chest, one over my stomach. I can connect to my feet on the floor, and I can say, "I'm held." And it immediately allows me to feel and to remember that I, in this moment, am being held by something so greater than my ability to hold my life all together. Can I trust that? Am I willing to trust that? How do I lean into that a little bit more today? What does that look like in real time? And so that little simple like phrase, "I'm held," we have a photo of it in our house. It's like the mantra that my wife and I always look at when times do get tough and we're a little, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't have a secure income all the time. Like, and I'm a creative, so I'm always taking risks with things. And maybe sometimes it works and maybe sometimes it doesn't work. And my wife and my kids are just kind of along for the journey. And sometimes I have to look at my wife and say, "Hey, we're held. We're held." And it just connects. It connects in the deepest parts of my being.
That's really beautiful. I've been studying Kabbalah lately, and it's a very similar principle where
What is this?
so Kabbalah is spirituality, almost like without religion. So it explains,
Cool.
yeah, Kabbalah basically means, I believe it's to receive, and it talks about, just preparing your vessel, like how to prepare your vessel to receive
Yes.
manifestations. And there's so many beautiful principles. And so I love this term of "I'm held" because I have this statement in my mind. I just say "good" because Kabbalah teaches that everything that happens is good and meant for your soul's expansion. So if you
Great.
lose money, good.
Good.
It's to expand you. If you
I
gain
love
money,
this.
good. And so
I
everything
love it.
is just good. And
I
it's
love
very simple,
this.
this "I'm held" principle, and I love it. It's beautiful, and it takes that fear away.
Yeah.
And now you're like, okay, well, what's the worst thing that could happen is and even the baddest things, it's like the
Yeah.
baddest things are meant to stretch you because
Come on.
darkness is where the light comes in.
Come on. Yeah. Yeah. And it's beautiful too, right? I referenced this earlier, but our original knowing. And this is a term that was used by like desert fathers and mothers, like mystics. And it's their original knowing. And the original knowing is actually their science. Y'all might like this. This was actually in my, I quoted this in my book because I just think it's so important because there's an idea out there called kinesthetic knowing. And our kinesthetic knowing is the original knowing. And it's the knowing that we are encoded within our DNA while we are in the womb, being supported by something outside of ourselves. Like our bodies remember that knowing that we are being held. Like our bodies remember that there is something outside of our ability that's actually given us life right now, that is supporting our life right now. Like we are in the womb being held. And so we are born with that knowing. And then as life happens, we're separated from it. And the journey is, I mean, you can even introduce Christianity into this concept right here when it's like this idea that like, you know, the first section, let's call it the first tenth of the story of Christianity was in the garden, right? And the 9/10 of the rest of the story was outside of the garden. And the point is that we're always remembering that there was once a garden, always remembering. And there's something in us, that ache, that something is missing, that ache, that divine discontentment that we feel that it's not quite right, that something is off, something is missing, that we can't really put language to it, but we feel that subtle ache in the underbelly of our lives. That's not a indication that you're not enough. That is your soul reminding you of your original knowing. And to now reconnect to that knowing, it's not an eternal ascent and to do more, be more, achieve more, or even spirituality and going higher. It's an internal descent into the underbelly of your lives. It's a remembering, it's a reconnection, it's a rediscovering, it's a reunion, what's already within you. And when you can now like see that journey, and this is like such a paradigm shift for a lot of high achievers, high performers, because our entire life has been built on the back of the upward trajectory. But there's always going to come a time in our lives, and this is really the heartbeat of my work that I do with leaders and with people, is that when we hit this threshold and we're being invited to step into this next evolution of expansion in our life where hard work and determination and pushing through is no longer working, what you're looking for is only going to be discovered through the bottom of an internal deepening. And when the world around you is screaming bigger, faster, stronger, and your work now is to answer the question, how do I go deeper? It's a little bit of a shift that you have to be able to dance through.
When do you notice that in your work, achievers get to this place? When do they go from this distracted, dissociated, externally successful, internally bankrupt, my favorite line from your entire speech?
Oh, thank you.
When do they shift from that to moving into this space that you're describing?
Yeah, it's great. Great question. I referred to it earlier, this first half of life and second half of life. Henry Deere Swift, who was a leader, a teacher from a Native American tribe in the Pacific Northwest, he talks about how everyone has a survival dance and everyone has a sacred dance, but not everybody experiences their sacred dance. And oftentimes what the invitation to cross over the threshold into our sacred dance, or the invitation to cross over the threshold into the second half of life, Father Richard Rohr, based on Jungian principles, he would say that it comes through what I referenced earlier, a divine ambush. And a divine ambush is a loss of some sort. And it's not just a physical loss. Maybe it is the loss of a loved one, but maybe it's the loss of a reputation. Maybe it's a loss of a career path. Maybe it's a loss of an identity. Maybe it's a loss of the way of life that you were so sure that if you could just get there, you would find everything that you were looking for. But you got there and you realized that you were still 10 feet from the end zone. Like it's some sort of loss that just pulls out that metaphorical rug from underneath us. And we realize that the scaffolding to our life is so fucking fragile. It is so fragile. And if you're willing to say yes to it, that end actually becomes the beginning to something new that's more expansive and more spacious than you have ever experienced. But the challenge is you're playing a new game. You're not on the old playing field operating by the old playing book any longer. It has an expiration date. And now you are playing a new game. And the new game isn't this soul upward trajectory as much as it's a downward descent. And learning to play this new game, this new language, this new framework, this new understanding, like that's the heartbeat of and as long as you can start creating spaces, or as long as I can start creating spaces to help people see that, my goal and my hope is that you better understand the journey that you are on. You better understand where you're at on the map. And when you can locate yourself, you can take that next step. And then as a result, you can continue to deepen your life and to expand the possibility of your life.
Something that I see a lot in my work is knowing something is not the same as doing something about it. How do you get, I just being real. How do you get achievers to do something about this, about what you're describing? Like you're sitting in front of maybe athletes or military people like you've been, and they're just completely blocked off.
Yeah.
They hear this and they might get it, but how do you get them to do something about it?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not trying to get them to do something about it. I'm
Fair.
trying to put language to their experiences so they better understand. And the people who are deeply hungry for real transformation, they say yes, right? They're the ones that are ready. And sometimes we're not ready because our protective parts are. See, this is what nobody talks about with success and like the fullness of success is we have been only taught to believe that it comes on the other side of greater achievement, right? But what we have to understand that oftentimes the prerequisite to the life that you truly want is creating a nervous system that feels safe with it. Because you think about this, like the life that you truly want, the relationships, the jobs, everything about that life, the fullness of that life is going to require you to step into a measure of authenticity, lean into the edges of vulnerability, and allow yourself to be seen in ways you have never imagined. And right now, your protective parts are saying, "Fuck you."
For real, right? Exactly.
Fuck you. We're gonna revert back to what we know: hard work, determination, achievement, grit, perseverance. We're gonna hold this all together, right? And so at some point, we got to realize that the life, that deep satisfaction, that longing, and the fulfillment that we want, it is going to require us to create the internal conditions that become the prerequisite to experience that external reality. And so a lot of times people just, they can hear it, but they're not ready for it. But it's like the seed is sown. That's how I feel like most of my work is. It's just like, let me just drop that little seed and allow life to water it. And when you are embodying enough healing in your life and suddenly you can see, now you can take the next step. But I'm not trying to force anyone, coerce anyone, or help anyone take that next step. When they're ready, they're ready. And that's the best possible approach.
Yeah. I love that. It was the perfect answer too, because that's one of the biggest things in IFS is, and why it's so different from traditional therapy is that it's not about coming in with an agenda. It's about coming in and helping someone go do the deeper work, dive deeper into themselves, like you're describing. Yeah. So have you seen Coach Carter, the movie, the basketball movie?
Yeah, a long time ago. Because that's like my deepest fear is not that I'm inadequate. They have that like line in there, right?
Yes,
yeah,
dude. That is the core of what I really feel like what you're describing is, and what it really, to be that beacon, because the back half of that is as you let your own light shine, you unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. And as you're liberated from your own fear, your presence automatically liberates others. And that is truly how I felt when you were speaking, it being so vulnerable and talking and stuff, is you automatically were liberating so many people in that room. And I really feel like that's, I share that mission and purpose as well. And that's what I want to do with my life. I read that quote every morning. It's written on my mirror.
Yeah, I love that. You know what it makes me think? Chloe said it earlier. Like the first half, like our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate, right? Like we think that's our deepest fear. And we are playing one game, and that is like making our lives happen. So like most people will live, from that fear of making their lives happen, and they're playing the game of trying to make their lives happen. There's a whole other way of life, right? In that it's actually like, I am so fucking good in a healthy way. Like I'm going to let my light shine, right? And in that, I'm going to liberate others. But what's happening is you're no longer living in the game of making your life happen. You're playing a game of learning how to receive life.
Beautiful reframe.
We know how to make our lives happen. Learning how to receive, creating the conditions to receive. Like Chloe, now we're hitting on self-worth. Now we're hitting on self-value, right? Because so many of us don't think we're worthy enough to receive. Like we are going, this is, we spend our lifetime. The last chapter of my book, maybe my publisher said that we're probably gonna have to change it, and I'm like, whatever. But the last chapter is don't push the river.
You gotta receive it.
I know. The last chapter is called "Don't Push the River," and it's this idea that like the river of life is flowing, y'all, and we are over here trying to run in the river, and we're tired, and we're missing the point. The point is to learn how to rest in it and allow the current flow to just naturally move us downshore to where we're going. And that is a completely different way of doing life.
Absolutely. And I think you see these monumental changes in people, and myself included, when you learn to flow with life and you create that nervous system to be present, because that's when you're receptive to answers and ideas and creativity. And I have tried to force so many things in my life through like will and strength, and I'm just going to produce more. And then sometimes I'll just like go for a nice walk and an idea will come to me. And it's like, boom, like that was or like things will come to me. And so how do you get someone who is like extremely type A, overachiever, like to just learn to relax and trust the process and regulate their nervous system? Do you have a system for that?
I guess like great question. And I think my hope is like, I think a lot of times, like, my work isn't telling you how to live. My work, I think, is like helping you see life differently. And because I think a lot of times what happens is, naturally, as a type A, high achiever, high performer individual, what we do is we just kind of bulldoze our way through these invitations to expand. We just bulldoze our way through life. We make this shit happen, right? We're really good at that. That's great. I love this. Like, kick the door down. If there's not a seat at the table, pull one up, right? Never mind asking, is this the table that I really want to be sitting at, right? It's more so,
Yep.
just pull one up and I'm going to make myself known. And I
Oh,
think it's beautiful. I think it's really beautiful. Like, this is the way that we are ensuring our survival in life. And at the end of the day, how do we see things differently? And so I think, from my standpoint, I teach a really simple transformational framework. It's just recognize, reframe, recenter. And from this simple moment of, like, you showing up, you getting a email that was unexpected, that just shut down your whole project, or just, it just, life is unfolding in the way that you didn't expect for it to unfold. And your natural response is fear and frustration, that's manifesting as frustration and anger, right? And your natural protective part is going to come online and say, bullshit, we're going to figure this out, and I'm going to make this call, and I'm going to go and berate this person, and I'm going to, work harder over here, whatever it might be. What if instead we just took a moment to recognize the fear that's surfacing in this moment? Like, what's the actual fear that's surfacing? It's not that the event just fell through, or that the deal just collapsed, right? There's an underlying fear underneath that. Can you tell me what that is? Can we, like, build awareness around that? Like, what is that fear? Is it the fear of not being enough? Is it the fear of actually not doing, what you expected to do with your life, and therefore you are going to be a failure in your father's eyes? Like, what is that fear coming online? Because that right there is what's going to change your life, not the deal coming through. And so if I can help you see the real invitation that's right in front of you, then we're going to be able to do some real transformational work. And then the second thing is, like, you said it perfectly. I might have to quote you at some point, because it's like, good, it fell through. Good, right? Like, good. And my reframe always is just that simple, like, yes, I'm expanding. Like, honestly, I went an entire year in my life keeping that feelings playbook. So anytime any sort of discomfort or disruptions manifested in my life, I stopped what I was doing, I wrote it down, I identified the underlying fear, and I literally shook my hands up in the air and I said, yes, I'm expanding. Like, I got excited that I was acknowledging the fear, because I knew I was expanding. And then right when we are reframing that good, I'm expanding, we recenter. Like, what can we do to teach our nervous system in the midst of this uncertainty, unpredictability, this very discomfort that we are experiencing, that, hey, we're okay. We're safe. We are safe. No, it's not going the way we want or the way that we expected, but we are safe. And this simple practice that is literally happening in real time is what's going to create the nervous system that is feeling safe with the next level of success in your life. And why this is so important, and I don't even know if I'm answering your question, but I'm going down this rabbit trail, is the why this is so important. And I learned this the hard way. The weight of success on a fractured heart is always going to increase the fracture. And doing this nervous system work is what secures the foundation, because the success that you want to experience is heavy. It's going to require more of you than you maybe have to give. It's going to ask more of you than you might be ready for. Like, it's heavy. That success is heavy. And far too many people are experiencing success, and the very success that they work so tirelessly for becomes the very thing that fractures their lives. Why? Because they haven't taken the time to actually cultivate the foundation that can sustain that success. And this is why we recognize, I call them expanders, right? Recognize the expanders in our life, those moments of disruptions, those moments of unmet expectations, those moments when fear surfaces and self-doubt whispers that you once again are not enough. Like, those moments, like, get excited. Those are your expanding moments. Reframe that opportunity and then recenter. Show your body, and you both know this, like, we can't just tell ourselves, we have to show our bodies that we are safe, that we are okay. The hard part about this work is that initially it doesn't feel like it's doing anything, right? It doesn't feel like it's helping at all, except maybe in the recentering place that you can find a little bit of inner equanimity for a second. But at the end of the day, what's really happening is you are creating those internal conditions that allow you to experience this new external reality, and most importantly, enjoy it. Success is no longer about how much you can do. Success has to be, how good can you feel while doing it? And that's a big change.
do you remember the moment you got there for yourself? That you truly felt like you were enough and you really could say, I am successful, and, like, really believe it and mean it?
June 3rd, 2019. It's finally enough.
Whoa, That is not what I was expecting. Tell me more. What's the story here?
Man, oh my gosh. I moved to Los Angeles, I left Canada, right? Because after the NFL, my life fell apart. I moved to Canada, became a janitor of an organization. I lived on a basement floor of a boiler room for the next 5 years of my life. And I cleaned toilets, I washed windows, I vacuumed floors, and I did it in exchange for free therapy so that I could start better understanding what was happening in the internal reality of my life. Because I knew that there was no amount of success that was actually going to reconcile this internal war that I was feeling. And so I went to work. And I was about 5 years into Canada. And through a strange series of events, I got asked to fly out to LA for a potential partnership, and I'm still friends with those two people, but the partnership never happened. But I realized I was going to LA for me to realize that I was supposed to move to LA, and I would have never ever came to that conclusion on my own. Like, I'm a small town Texas boy. I am not made for Los Angeles. But nonetheless, I was out there and I was like, holy shit, this is the next chapter of my life. Like, I'm supposed to move to LA. Packed up my bags. I drove across the country. I moved to Los Angeles. And there is something so electrifying about Los Angeles. I love that city because there is such an energy of possibility that you swim in that city. Like, if you got a dream, there is somebody there that can connect you to somebody else and you can see that dream come true. But the city also will eat you up and spit you out into the ocean, like, real quick. However, like, I moved out to LA, like, and I truly felt like I was following my heart out there. And I had, because of that, like, all of these expectations of like what I thought it was going to turn into. Like, wow, I'm moving to LA. The brand is coming together. I've discovered speaking. My speaking business is getting off the ground. Like, that addict part of me, oof, like, was so loud and so strong because it's like, oh, here it is. It's all finally coming together. I did the healing work and now it's coming together. And when I tell you, I might be the only person ever to move out to LA, not to build a bigger and better life, but to learn how to grieve. It's the truth. And I went out to Los Angeles and nothing was clicking. Like, I was having fun. I was, doing some of the work, but all of the ways I thought my life was going to turn out, just one unmet expectation after another, after another, after another. And it finally led me to this moment where I realized that the greatest demonstration of success in my life is not building a bigger brand or stepping into the idea of what I think it's supposed to look like, but the greatest demonstration of success in my life is radically accepting who I am and where I am. And I had never done that. My life and what I called growth and what I called healing was all about bigger, better, faster, and stronger. It was all about creating this idea image and reaching that idea image of what I thought it was going to be. But the whole time I was doing it at the expense of being here now. And it took me a long time to see that my life is never enough, not because I had not yet accomplished enough, but because there was some part of me that still felt inadequate. There was some part of me that still felt not enough. And it was in that season of acceptance, learning how to radically accept my life, which was built on the back of grief, right? My favorite teacher and speaker is Francis Weller. He wrote the book, the Wild Edge of Sorrow. And he talks about how, like, grief is this beautiful alchemy that transmutes our pain and our suffering into a seed and then plants that seed into fertile soil that can grow new life. And I started to learn what it looks like to actually take this grief that is around all of these unmet expectations around who I thought I was going to be and the life that I thought I was going to have, and to build an altar for it, and to befriend it, and to lean up against it, and to be so curious around it, and to ask it questions, and to allow her to ask me questions. And I realized, one of my favorite lines from Rilke, the poet, as he says, I don't have much knowledge in grief yet, so this massive darkness makes me small. Meaning, when you do have knowledge in your grief, this massive darkness can make you large. And I started to realize that, oh no, the grief is my greatest teacher. This radical acceptance is the path to the life that I want. Not building bigger, better, faster, and stronger, but learning how to accept who I am and where I am. This is really where I learned how to descend into my life. And that was a moment I remember, like, on the back of like all of this coming together, just driving down the PCH. I pulled off on side of the road. I saw this random kind of like, looked like just a private rocky beach down there. I saw a staircase. I did a U-turn. I went down the staircase and I sat on that beach. And this is like, sounds so cliche, but I was just sitting there, just realizing that like all of this was coming together. Like, I moved to LA to better understand how to radically accept who I am and where I am. And that right there was the first time that I've ever felt like it was finally enough in my life.
That's awesome.
How did things change for you? So once you accepted, did things change right away, or did it take time?
Do you want to know what happened next?
Yeah, next.
2 weeks later, I got invited to go to Kentucky for a writer's boot camp. So there's a nonprofit in this world is a nonprofit that every year invites 12 aspiring authors from around the country to come to this small town in Kentucky to do like a week of boot camp to learn how to write and publish your first book. Super, super cool. Like very like obviously rigorous process to get in. Like you had to submit this large essay, all of this stuff to get in. I was invited, and that first night I got there, we were all sitting in a circle, 12 of us, and we were telling our stories. And I told my story, and then there was a girl that was sitting next to me, and she told her story. And when she told her story, and I had noticed her when I first walked in, and my first thought was, I said, who is this magical creature? And she told her story, and she was writing a book at the time that was basically relating, because she was a chef, and she was writing a book that was relating to all of the men she used to date in Los Angeles, like food groups. So like the time that I dated a TV dinner, and like giving you a option of something that was more like healthier. And she was talking about like how she dated a Snickers bar and a TV dinner and all of this different shit. And she just wanted a gourmet cheeseburger. And so I leaned over to her and I said, listen, I know the best cheeseburger in Los Angeles. It's a secret spot in Venice, California. You want to go when we get back? And she said, yeah. And the next night I stayed up until about 4 a.m. with her, just talking about the deepest complexities of life and talking about our deepest dreams and our greatest desires and our biggest fears. And that night I was walking back to my room, and I knew that I just met my person. Like our paths have collided. And, Rumi has this line that says, lovers don't just meet somewhere down the road. They have been within each other all along. Like, I finally knew what that meant. Like, my soul knew her, and I just found my soul. Like, I truly never believed in soulmates until I met her. And we were engaged 3 months later and married 6 months later. And I have shared 6 beautiful years, the most expansive years of my life, with the woman that I, now call my wife and my partner, Kara. And I know I could have never have attracted this expansive type of love. That is the easiest thing I've ever done. That reminds me that the most magical and the most beautiful things can show up in your life if you just create the space for it. And I think the quickest way that I realized, or the quickest manifestation of what became real in my life after feeling like it's finally enough, is I created the space for a type of love that was incomprehensible to me at the time.
I love that. Where would you say that falls in your priorities? Like your
My
love, your
relationship?
purpose, your mission? Yeah. Like where does that fall in your top 3 priorities?
Oh my gosh, it's my wife. Like like this is everything. Yeah, like over everything and anything. Like this is, I think, my greatest gift in this world. I truly believe it's a gift. And I think we're going to do something really special together down the road when the timing is right. We're not forcing it. We're not trying to make it happen. But when I tell you that my relationship with my wife is the easiest thing and the most expansive thing I've ever experienced in my life and continue to experience in my life, I am not saying that lightly. Like it's the most beautiful thing, and it's the highest priority for me. And she's like this. She sees me in ways that I've never ever been seen, and she helps me see myself in ways I have not yet been able to see. And she invites me into a way of learning how to receive life even more. I'll never forget, like, just a quick story. I remember about 3 weeks of knowing each other. We're on a bed and we were like giggling and wrestling and doing the whole flirting thing. And she asked me about sex. She asked me about like my relationship with sex. And that's one of the ways that I used to cope, is I would just have random sex, sometimes multiple partners in a day. I was just addicted to sex for a long season of my life. And it just made me feel in control, and it made me feel powerful when I was feeling really weak and insecure in my life. And so I would just go on these sexual conquests. And now here I am, I met my soulmate, and I have all of this shame dragging behind me because of all of this sex and random sex that I've had. And now she's asking me about my sex life. And I'm in my head so afraid that, like, holy shit, if she sees the real me, like, this is over. Like, I fucked this up. The amount of self-hatred that was moving through me could have killed a fucking elephant. Like, I was so mad at myself for choosing that path now when it was going to maybe compromise what I wanted the most. And that was her. And I'll never forget, like, I got squirmy and I started to like really shut down, tangibly shut down. Like my heart space started to shut down. I started getting like squirmy, and I putting distance between us, not even knowing I was putting distance between us. I was about to just bolt out the door and being like, I'm not talking to you about this. And she looked at me and she kind of pulled away and she put a smile on her face and she started blowing in my face. I said, what are you doing? And she goes, I'm blowing away the shame you feel right now.
What kind of extraterrestrial is this woman? Like, that's amazing.
Yeah. And it was like the first time, like I felt so safe in my body to allow another human to see me in ways that I have never been seen before. I've never allowed anybody to go there before. And I think that just like is one experience after experiences after experiences after experiences on the way that my wife and I show up for each other and why it's still like the most important thing in my life.
Jeez.
You have really tactical tools of what keeps your relationship so strong, especially
Mm,
after the first few years, and you
Yeah.
also have kids, which is another insane test of a relationship.
Yeah, that's a great question. First thing is we always tell our truth. Like that's just like a value in our family. Like we tell our truth, but we also stay on our side of the net when we tell our truth. And there's I'm not going to go into the details of it, but I think it was at Harvard or Stanford. There was a class that was taught for about 20 years, and it was the most successful and most frequented extracurricular class over 2 decades. And I think it's like Dr. Gary or Brad or Carolyn something, but it's the class taught over the net principles. And over the net principle is essentially there's always three things going on in a conversation, right? What I'm saying, what I feel, and how you're interpreting it. Out of those three things, I only know two. I only know what I'm saying, how I feel. I do not know what you're interpreting. And so the point is, in a heated discussion or in a tough conversation, you stay on your side of the net. I cannot assign to how you feel. I cannot tell you what you're doing. I cannot say what you're doing. I have to stay on my side of the net. Learning how to master to stay on your side of the net makes constructive conversations infinitely more constructive. Because when I'm having a bad day and my wife walks in and I'm cold and I'm feeling a little distant or whatever it might be, and she says, "Why are you being so cold?" And she just jumped over her net. Suddenly she's defending or she's blaming me for being so cold. My natural, defense mechanism is, "Excuse me? Like what are you talking about? I'm not being cold. What are you talking about?" Right?
yeah.
Instead of, "Hey honey, there's a part of me right now that feels distant from you. Are you okay? What's going on?" She stayed on her side of the net. There was nothing
Mm,
accusatory about that, right? She asked a question, and it maintained the safety of our connection, right? And learning how to stay on your side of the net is such a practical tool. And I'm just barely covering the surface of that. You can look it up, and there's a book about it, and also tons of YouTube videos on how to stay on your side of the net. It's such a practical way of learning how to do hard conversations well, which actually on
mm,
the other end deepens your intimacy, deepens your trust, it deepens your connection. And the last thing I would say with that is like we don't do anything that compromises the emotional safety of our house or our relationship. And if we do something right, we acknowledge it. We do not push it on. Like we acknowledge it in the moment. We take radical responsibility, which is more me taking radical responsibility than her. But we do everything we can to maintain that emotional safety in our house, and it's by far the most important thing.
what are some of the things that are, you don't have to get super personal necessarily, but what rock that emotional safety? Or do you see maybe in other relationships or things like the work that you do? Like, what are some of the most common ones?
That rock the emotional safety of a
Mm-hmm.
conversation. Yeah, I think one is, like just not being honest with where you are and what's going on in your life. This is a double-edged sword. I think Brene Brown talks about this in one of her books. He like a guy came to one of her book signings and was, upset because the woman in his life was asking him to be more vulnerable. But the moment he became more vulnerable, she basically was like, "You better get this shit together. You're our provider." And he was just like, I fell off my horse, and I was honest about it. And here she is now criticizing me because it threatened her. And so I think there is just something about, cultivating and holding a deep level of honesty and also empathy inside of a relationship. And I think the one thing that can jeopardize all of that is you not taking responsibility for your own shit. Right? Like my job is not to heal my wife. My job is not to make her fears magically disappear. Like that's her work. My job is
Mm,
to help create the space to allow her to do her work. Right. And I think when there was this refusal to accept responsibility for your own shit inside of a relationship, because the thing is like we are so familiar with each other. We are around each other all the time, and familiarity can crush love fast. Right. It can crush it fast. And so to give you another practical tool that we oftentimes use is before I talk to my wife about something that's tough, or like, "Hey, I forgot, like I'm in a season right now where I just messaged my coach this morning and I was like verbally vomiting on her because I feel so fragile. I feel so vulnerable in my life and I'm actually scared." And I told my wife when I woke up this morning, I said, "Hey, instead of just vomiting this on her, the question that we always use that I feel like preserves emotional safety is, I'm going through something. Do you have space to talk about this?"
mm,
Instead of naturally assuming that, "Hey, you're my wife and I need you to be here for me now."
yeah.
"Excuse me, well, our daughter woke up twice. I couldn't go back to sleep. I've been up since 4 a.m. And you want to talk to me about shit going on in your heart? Fuck you." Right? But instead, it's like, "Hey, babe, do you have space about what's going on or something that's going on in my heart? Can we talk about that?" And she said, truly, she said this morning, honey, I want nothing more but just to hear you. But right now, I've been up since 4:30. Let's reconvene when they're having their naps this afternoon. Let's talk about it then. Great. Thanks, honey. See you then.
Clarity.
That simple question changes a lot.
Damn. What has helped you? Because that caretaking role is something I see a lot in couples and myself, honestly. I fall into that caretaking role as well. Because sometimes I feel like, oh my God, I'm trained in IFS psychotherapy. I understand trauma. I research this stuff. Like, it's so easy for me to like fall into that caretaking helper role, fixer role. How do you notice that in yourself, and how do you prevent it? Like, for others?
Yeah, I think you can. It's not about not caretaking. It's about really understanding the driving force behind your caretaking. And for the longest time, the driving force behind my caretaking was, I need you to be okay, because you not being okay threatens me.
Yep.
If for the longest time, you not being okay makes me move slower through life. And if I move slower through life, I'm going to be behind in life. So like my whole caretaking was driven by this fear. And so now my caretaking is like, hey, I love you. I see you. I want nothing more but to see you thrive in your life. What do you need? Where are we? Where are we? What's going on? And so it's coming from a different place. It's coming from a different motive. I've looked hard and close at the fears that used to drive my caretaking. And for the longest time is, I need you to be comfortable and safe, because when you're not comfortable and safe, you disrupt me and how I feel about my life. And so you can see quickly how the ulterior motive behind that was pure selfishness. And I called it love, and I called it caretaking. And so just like really taking time to examine the patterns behind your life. I have a course my book is coming out next year, and I just created a whole new ecosystem around it. And I have a quiz that people can take because I've kind of like labeled these 6 different archetypes. So my book is called Unstriving, and it's for people who are tired of trying so hard, but no more is available. Like, we have all been conditioned to believe that it's through producing, performing, and achieving that we can find the life that we deeply want. But we've all done that, and we're burned out, we're disconnected, and we're tired. But yes, still something in us longs for more. And Unstriving is the courageous path to discovering the fullness of life that the hustle promised but never delivered. And so I have, like, you can take a quiz, my Unstriving quiz, to see what kind of striver you are, or to see what your striving style is. And it's pretty cool because I have 6 different archetypes that if you take this quiz, you'll get assigned one of these archetypes. And right immediately, it's going to help you see the pattern behind your caretaking. It's going to help you see the pattern behind your pursuit of success. It's going to see the pattern behind all of the things that you do in your life. And the reason why I bring it up is because I identified as the controller archetype, which for the longest time was my driving force behind my caretaking, right? Because I was just trying to control things in my own life.
Damn. That's beautiful. I love that. We're about to release the Action Academy, and it's for achievers, anxious but ambitious achievers. It's a similar vibe. Like, how can you find balance or play this balancing act? I don't think that you find balance. I think balance is a verb, not a noun, but I digress.
Truly.
Point being is I love that mission, especially with achievers today. What the hustle promised but didn't deliver is such a great freaking line. I can't stop thinking about that. That's interesting. Something I'm curious about as well is misconceptions that you see, or things that persist, myths that persist in relation to healing. That the hustle didn't deliver line is one of those myths, I feel like. But what other things do you see commonly spouted online that you're just like, dude, that will not lead you to the place that you think it will?
Yeah, it's a great question, man. Yeah, I think, oh man, the first thing that I'm thinking of, I don't know what's seen is spouted online, but there is a incredibly different approach to life when, let me say it like this. For the longest time, my life was all about the pursuit of success and thinking it was about success. But I realized more that I wasn't pursuing success as much as I was avoiding stillness. And the growth that actually changes the game is not discovered through greater external achievements, but only going to be discovered through deeper internal growth. And it's that, I think, is such a big understanding that needs to be embraced and accepted for us to find greater senses of satisfaction and fulfillment in our life. Is it really about the success like you say it is, or is it more about avoiding stillness? And I think out there in the bigger, faster, stronger, performance-driven culture that we live in, that can get very convoluted quickly. Like, your greatest way you can move your life forward is actually to learn how to be more still. And stillness isn't about doing less. Big misconception. Stillness is not about doing less. Stillness is about how you do everything. Like, it's about having a heart that is grounded in all that you do. This is why, like, another big misconception, taking time off is going to be the solution to your burnout. No, because you can take all the time off, external time off, and it doesn't matter if you're still internally on. But your burnout
I
is not
feel
going to be
that.
healed by taking more external time off. That's just not the way that it works. Because then you just go back right to the way things once were. And it's the pattern that repeats itself.
What maybe for you and for the people that you work with, what's in the stillness that's so scary, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just like you're going to meet the parts of yourself that have been avoided or exiled, and also you're going to come face to face with the underlying fears of your life. And for so many of us, we've had this uncanny ability to compartmentalize that fear and to wrap it in the blankets of hustle and ambition and use it as the very thing that drives us. Like the fear of not being enough, the fear of disappointing my mother, and the fear of not being enough. Like, what a great motivator. What a great motivator. Like, and it served me so well. It served me so well. But at some point, like I had a mentor tell me once that what you start with is what you finish with. And so if you start from a place of fear, like it doesn't matter how much you do or accomplish, fear is still there, guy. Like fear is still there.
That's so good. Damn.
And so like I think just the stillness, you have to be present with what you're feeling. You have to be present and face all of the things that you are just afraid to look at. And I get it, right? Because to do that, that requires a level of inner safety that isn't necessarily our baseline. It has to be cultivated.
Speaking of cultivation, something that is unique to your story is you finding your wife, which I think is awesome. A question that I get a lot is like, can I do this work by myself? Can I heal myself by myself? Like, do you think you could have gotten to the place that you are without having that other person to help you with that?
No, it's just like, what is it? We're wounded by community, but also healed in community kind of idea.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think there was so much work. There's so much work that you can do on your own, but then there's so much greater growth that happens when you allow yourself to be seen by others. Like, but this isn't just like picking anybody and saying, hey, like, this is the performative vulnerability that's sweeping across our culture right now in this, this health and wellness lifestyle that's commercialized. It's just exhausting. And it's not about like just verbally vomiting on other people. It's just like, who are the people in your life that you have built relationship equity with, that you can allow them to see parts of you that you're afraid to show? Like, that's where real growth is. Like, how do we show up in life with less pretenses and less facades and allow people to see like the true depth of who we are in the moments of intense vulnerability, fear, and discomfort? Like, how do we no longer hide those parts about us, but be brave enough to invite people into those stories of our lives? And man, like I have done so much healing on my own, but then there were levels that I was not yet able to access until I leaned into that vulnerability with other people, and that changed everything.
I love that. Attachment trauma is not created in isolation, so it can't be healed in isolation. It's something I want to tell so many people that.
Yeah.
You performative vulnerability, though, I cannot leave that stone unturned. This is what we do on this show right? So this is the thing here. Performative vulnerability. I feel it. I don't feel it with you generally, but I do feel what you're describing. Yeah. There are people that just start talking and they're trying to be vulnerable as a tool, as opposed to they're doing vulnerability. They're not being vulnerable, if that makes sense.
What a frustrating thing. Talk
more about that. What have you seen? Why does this happen? What's going on with this?
I don't have to talk about it. Just go to LinkedIn. Just read through LinkedIn posts. Like, you'll find all you need to find. This is so vulnerable, but I'm going to share it. My cat died this morning. Not to dismiss the cat, right? But I'm sorry, but if you have to preface what you're about to say with how vulnerable this is, just stop for a second. And let's just look at the driving force behind your vulnerability, right? And I think it's just something that's so frustrating because it's like, I did that for the longest time, but because I was working it out. But now it's just like, now you don't try to be vulnerable. It's just who you are. You don't try to be authentic. You're not trying to do any of this. It's just who you are. And you can't teach that. You got to live into that. But I think to live into that, like, requires you to call out your own bullshit. Like if you know that you are trying to write something or say something to garnish more admiration, praise, and to give yourself a shot of an injection of acceptance, like, just stop for a second and just recognize why you are doing what you are doing, and then choose what is the decision that can lead you to your highest self, right? And just having the awareness to slow down and to really examine those driving forces behind your life and the decisions that you are making and about what you're going to do or say, important.
Yeah, I agree. Vulnerability is such a interesting term. I love Brene Brown as well.
Yeah, it's like vulnerability isn't like expressing what you've been through or what you're going through. I understand how that can be vulnerable, but vulnerability to me, that's a level of vulnerability. But vulnerability to me, it's like these moments when I am standing so metaphorically naked in my life, fully exposed, raw. Do I armor up? Do I armor in the heat of the moment? Do I armor up? Do I shut it down? Do I put up a pretense and a facade? Do I dismiss it? Or do I sit in that? Like, do I allow somebody into that moment with me? Like, and only you can decide, and only you can tell, right? But I'm telling you, like, when Brene talks about it is the birthplace of joy and connection, I'm telling you, it is the birthplace of joy and connection. It truly is. Yeah.
I agree. It's an identity too. I feel like a lot of what you're describing is like shifting from doing vulnerability to like being a vulnerable person, like a shift in your identity of who you are and who you show up as.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just like one level. Like I'm working on this right now. Like, how do I, stop chasing more financial success and become it? Because like chasing anything is reinforcing that you don't have it. And so you're coming from a place of lack. You're coming from a place of scarcity. And right, you're just going around the same mountain over and over and over again. So how do we like embody the essence of abundance? Like, what does that feel like? What does that look like in our own lives? And I'm sorry, you can't read a book on it. You can, but it does not like replace you doing your own work and learning yourself, like working that out in real time.
Yeah. What outside of your wife, it sounds like she's got tons of stuff. What other support mechanisms? You mentioned a coach. Like, what other support mechanisms and stuff have you had to get to this place? Like West Point graduate, NFL athlete to mystic philosopher.
Philosopher, yeah.
What's gotten you here? Like how?
I do a lot of work on keeping my heart open. And there is just like this willingness to be able to like posture your heart on this throne of willingness to go as deep as life is inviting you to go. And regardless of what it's going to cost you, regardless of the outcomes, you know that love is good and love is going to continuously invite you into a deeper, more expansive reality if you're willing to say yes to it. But the prerequisite to saying yes to it is letting go of everything and anything that you are clinging to. And there's just a posture of our hearts that we can embody that allows us to say, I'm going to go the distance. I don't know what it's going to cost me. I don't know where it's going to lead, but more than anything, that's what I want. I want to taste the fullness of life. And I want to know at the deepest parts of my being that it's good, regardless of all of the shit that I am presented with on a daily basis. Like, can you posture your heart on a throne of willingness? And that just takes like an incredible amount of self-inventory, of creating space for yourself, and to like really wrestle it out. And I think like the hardest part for me is, that was easy for me because I feel like naturally that's kind of who I am. Because I was always, since I was young age, like that deep hunger, thirst to experience life. But then when I started having some success in my life, and then when I found my wife, and then when we had 2 beautiful kids, and then when we bought a house, and then when I have a nice car, suddenly I have far too much to lose. And you start clinging to things, and you start clinging to expectations, and you start clinging to ways of life. And that starts now shifting your pursuit of more, not for greater expansion, but to sustain what you have. And that can make life feel really suffocating and really small. And so I'm still actively working out, like in real time. What does it look like to let go of this beautiful life that I have built? What does that look like not to cling to any of this
attachment?
Yeah, what does that look like in real time? Because, I don't want to play that game, because deep down I want to believe that life is good and I want to reach these next levels of success, and I don't want to spend all of my energy trying to sustain that, because that's fucking exhausting. And so there's these like energetic tethers, is that the right word, that we have to be willing to collapse, to disconnect from. And that just takes an incredible amount of work. And I think one thing that I've always done is I've always invited people into my story, trusted resources, to help me see what I can't see.
Yeah. Wow. All right, we're coming up. Time has disappeared. It's like an IFS session. You just open your eyes and time has escaped us. Let's move into the lightning lab, which is how we bring this thing in for a landing here. One question that's not on there that I want to ask, that I was thinking about as we were going, is you graduated from West Point. If you got to teach one class to West Point graduates and stuff, what would be the 3 main topics of that class? Oh shit. We're going to have to be back on with CJ.
The heart of authenticity and the importance of surrender as effective leadership.
Can you really quickly redefine masculinity for us? Because I think this is really important.
Yeah, I think there's just like, I think the greatest demonstration of masculinity in my life is using my strength, my willpower, my determination, all of these masculine qualities to engage in being more present with what is. right? Not to fight my way through life. There's this beautiful integration that happens with like the masculine and the feminine that creates the whole person. And we live in an overtly wounded masculine society that has really fueled capitalism. So it's hard to address it, but it's like, it's not just all about willpower and effort and strength. And I'm not talking about like, men, like, like, hey, I'm a meathead. Like, I think that's like, you're a wounded little boy and you're calling yourself masculine. Like, get it real. Like, you got little boy energy and it's clear as day. If you want to call that masculinity, great, but you're delusional. Like, grow up and like meet the little boy inside of you and show him what it's like to be a man. And the reason why you haven't done that is because, like, really, honestly, like, there are no fucking culture, like, rites of passages in our culture, right? There are no ways. We are stuck in, Robert Bly calls it a sibling generation. Like, we are stuck in a sibling generation. Right now, I have a 3-year-old, and she has adolescent energy because she's a 3-year-old, goddammit, and she's supposed to have adolescent energy. And in adolescent energy, what she's constantly doing? She's constantly fighting for mom's attention. She's constantly looking for my approval. How many grown-ass adults do you know walking through their life right now, constantly longing for approval and looking for validation? Because they are adults trapped in a psychological adolescent energy because they have never formally grown up. And yeah, there is a wounded masculinity in that. And I think what I'm speaking of is like this masculinity is so much bigger than how men show up, right? It's the way that we are partnering with the masculine parts of life and our relationship to them and what we are using them for. And so, yeah, I might not have answered your question there, but it's just a little bit of a ramble around what I meant when I said masculinity. Because I think we're in military context, right? It's all about be strong, have it all together, work harder, don't show any fear, don't show any weakness. And I think we call that like a form of masculinity, even for women, right? Like there is an element of masculinity inherently ingrained into that way of life, right? What if we redefined it as actually as your willingness to take your willpower and to use it to be so vulnerable and so open about your fear. Like that's some true masculinity and seeing it differently.
Damn. I could not agree more.
Take your willpower and use it to stay connected to your body when everything in you wants to betray it and abandon it. Take the willpower and the strength and the determination and the discipline that you use to hold it all together and actually learn how to sit in the discomfort of meeting the little boy and girl inside of you that has never been approved of and give him or her approval. Like it's a different way of doing it.
Damn. I am on that journey of this hopefully new masculinity myself right now. Like that's the exact part I'm meeting currently is the one that feels like it needs approval. So I'm
I hear you.
That's
I heard this the other day and it was like a funny meme and it was like, yeah, 6-pack is cool, but can they sit with themselves?
Yeah, I saw that one. It's so good.
Dude.
This is why I have such a hard time doing like men's movements because it's like, yeah, we're going to smoke cigars and we're going to wrestle shirtless and we're going to grow a beard and we're going to talk about vulnerability. And I'm like, okay, like, all right, I love it.
Love it. Yeah, that's wild. All right, the next one here is, which actually you kind of hit on already, but it's a counterintuitive to truth. So what's something that you believe to be true that very few people agree with you on?
I don't know if they disagree with me, but something that I believe true that, if I could create a billboard, what I would say on it is grieve. Like I would just say grieve. And when I say that, people are like, nobody died. Yeah, but there's a version of you that died, or there's a version of you trying to die, or there's an idea and way of life that you hope for that no longer exists. Like death is always here. And I think the depths into which we are willing to feel our grief create the height of the container of the next season of expansion for our lives. And your willingness to grieve is what creates a space for new life to emerge. And I just think that's really ignored and undervalued in a culture that says, failure? That's okay. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and try harder next time. Like betrayal, take that pain and make something of yourself. Work harder, show them who you are. No. Oh my God, that hurts. Grieve the pain. Like just grieve. Yeah.
What's a book that you would suggest on this? You mentioned one. What was the one that you mentioned around grief? Yeah, Wild Edge of Sorrow.
Yeah, he talks about the 5 gates of grief. There's a generational grief. There's a global collective grief. There's the grief that comes from what we expected but did not get. There's a grief from the natural deterioration of the natural world around us. There's so much grief in our life that we just have no language for, even though we are being fucking bombarded with it every day.
Got it.
Right now, I'm taking a course on how to create. I'm going through a training so that I can learn how to create more formal grief rituals for community, because I just think it's so important. I truly do. We're like entering into the season of life. Francis Bell, he calls it the long dark. Like systems are collapsing. Like on the other side of COVID, if you think of COVID as like, yeah, physical death, a lot of people died, but there's also a metaphorical death for everybody.
Yeah.
And that is like, if you know anything about spiral dynamics, like this is an evolution of consciousness that's happening right now. And this is why we're seeing systems begin to unravel and scaffolding beginning to shake. Like there is a shift in consciousness that's happening. Younger generation don't want to build the American dream because they look at their parents and realize how fucking miserable they are, and they don't want that. They want to do it differently, right? There's a complete shift in consciousness that's happening right now. And for us to create new life, the prerequisite to new life is first an abundant death. And we are in a death of so many things right now. And our ability to be present with that death, to sit in the darkness for as long as it takes until we see the light, to grieve so that that darkness actually enlarges us instead of makes us smaller, is absolutely monumentally important.
Damn. This could not have come at a better time for me, speaking of universal moment. So I'm definitely going to read this book, and I hope others do too. I love that. All right, Chloe, bring us home with this last one. It's my favorite question.
The last question is, what's one question you wish people would ask you more?
Yeah. What's one question do you wish that people ask you more? I would, this probably would change tomorrow. The question that I would think of like right now, and I'm a guy you can ask me like hard questions and I'm okay with it. I would love for somebody to ask me right now is like, are you feeling lonely? And what do you need? And I think like, I'm constantly on stages, I'm constantly meeting people, but there's a wilderness period. I'm also in this evolution of expansion. Like the identity of who I was 2 weeks ago is not who I am today. Like there is an expansion that's happening in my life currently right now. And man, I was just telling my wife yesterday, like I feel so alone. I feel so lonely in this, because it's not that like I'm not surrounded by incredible people and community, but like I don't know how to relate to myself right now. And I feel just so lost in the wilderness of my own life. And it's just like, are you feeling lonely? And what do you need right now? It makes me think of one of my favorite poems. It's from a poet named David Wagner. And he wrote a poem called Lost. And it comes from a teaching story from a Pacific Northwest tribe, Native American tribe. And it's derived from this teaching story where children, when they were about to run into the wilderness, they would come to elders and they pull on the robes. And they would ask, like, what do we do when we're in the forest of our lives lost? And this was the life or death question. And in the response, he created this poem. And it says, when you walk into the forest and you find yourself lost, the poem says, stand still. The trees know where you are. The bushes beside of you and the trees ahead of you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here. You must treat it as a powerful stranger. You must ask permission to know it and to be known by it. Stand still. You must let the forest find you. I've spent the majority of my life feeling lost and running in every direction, trying to make my way out of the forest. But now I know when I'm feeling lost, it's no. What does it look like to allow the forest to find me? And I think there's something about like when you're feeling lonely, when you're feeling a little lost, when you're feeling a little disoriented in your life, letting people into that and allowing your community and the people in your life to meet you with what you need in that moment and communicating what you need. I think that's a big part of allowing the forest to find you. And so having somebody ask me that right now would be beautiful.
In the tradition of our podcast, we ask the question they would like to be asked. So, Caleb, are you feeling lonely, and what do you need right now, man? Talk to me.
At this time, I need some damn lunch.
Me too. I feel that.
Yeah, this gave me this is a nourishing conversation. Sometimes you do podcasts and you're like blah blah blah, but these were really really beautiful questions, and so I thank both of you for creating the space and asking the questions that can actually genuinely nourish a soul.
Oh yeah. Cool. Well, we appreciate you hopping on. Is there any, where can people find you? Where can they learn more? We'll put your website below, your social media, anything else?
Instagram, calebcampbell.me is where I'm most active.
Okay. And then this book, talk to us about, you might have to have you back on and promote it, but tell us a little bit more about the book, when it launches. Is there a wait list? People can sign up for it? Anything like that?
Yeah, you can just, if you go to right now, calebcampbell.me /unstriving or /unstriving, you'll find kind of like the Unstriving ecosystem. The book will live on there. But then also unstriving.com is being built out right now. And so that will be a landing place in the near future. But the book, it's just like, I said it earlier, I think people are so tired of doing it the old way of just effortlessly striving, trying to create a life that they love and constantly coming up short. And they know more hard work and pushing through another closed door is not necessarily synonymous with wholeness and satisfaction and fulfillment. And deep down, they know more is possible, but they don't know how to access it because the old ways have dried up and the new way has not yet reappeared or emerged. And so my hope is that through the process of unstriving, this is the courageous path of discovering the fullness of life that is already buried within you. But we just have to learn how to uncover it. And that's the journey of unstriving.
Well, thank you so much for hopping on with us. We really appreciate you taking some time out of your day. I know you're busy.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a wrap on the Decision Lab, everybody. Thank you so much for hopping in. If there's another expert or brand you want us to chat with, let us know in the comments or DM us on Instagram. We love hearing from you guys. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the Decision Lab. Peace.
Love it. Thanks, guys.